Hi, ladies.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Enjoying the sunshine. It's a
Oh,
nice treat.
nice out. I should probably take this outside and go from there. Melissa said she's on the phone but listening. Hi, Anne.
Good afternoon. Hello.
And Susan's here. It's a girls' club today. I love it. All right. Well, I guess we'll get started, and then if people trickle in, we'll kind of go from there. So I'm going to keep this as interactive as possible today because I want to give you guys answers to whatever questions that you have or things that you need based on the video and the content that was put out prior to this about making and receiving offers. I'd also love to talk about if this would be helpful to you guys to how to win offers in today's market, because I think with the current climate, that's that's obviously a huge topic. So out of the people that we have on the call today, are you guys, maybe you guys can just give me a little bit of feedback about kind of what your role is and kind of where you are with things. Like, are we agents on teams? Are we individual agents? Buyer, seller side?
So I'm an agent on a team in Westchester, the Rich Crisafulli team, and I'm still new, still learning a lot, but trying to soak it all in.
That's great. I love it.
Hi, Allison. I'm Susan Tate. I'm a new agent, just less than a month. I work out of the Exton office, and I am an independent sales agent on my own.
Awesome.
I'm also solo agent. I'm not with a team, and I'm still kind of new, 4 months so far.
Okay.
And I would love to know how to win a multiple offer because I'm in one right now. So I appreciate all the help.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll definitely cover that. Anybody else?
And then my husband and I, Graham, are a husband and wife team in Westchester. So, and we're fairly new. We have two deals in the work, but neither of them have closed yet. So it's not a done deal until it's
Not over till it's
official.
over. Yeah, that's great. That's exciting. So I'll have to drop by and meet you next time you're in there. I'm also in the Westchester office. So I guess I should have started by introducing myself. I'm Allison McGuire. My partner Brad Moore and I have the Moore McGuire real estate team in the Westchester office. And I have been in business for 11 years, and I primarily focus on listings right now, but I do, kind of whatever's needed for certain past clients as well, and just help the team grow. And I love to be able to work with everyone agent to agent. So, all right, cool. Well, I think, why don't we do this? Why don't we start? First of all, did everybody get a chance to at least look over the PDF that came with this, or watch some of the video that was the precursor to this call?
I didn't. I'm sorry, not this time.
Graham and I were with a couple of clients, so we did not.
Okay. So it was basic. I mean, the basics of this were the basics of sending and receiving offers. So how to send and receive an offer if you hadn't done that before. I just want to make sure, I kind of want to know where to focus. Do you guys want me to kind of go over the basics of how to send and receive offers specifically, or would you like me to focus a little bit more on the sort of the how to win the deal in general? Does anybody have a preference?
How to win a deal.
I also had a question because I had my first listing and it did go under contract, but I had a question about, you have all these people that throw these wild numbers at you. And now I'm like really worried. I was up like thinking about it last night in the middle of the night. What if it doesn't appraise?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely something to think about in this market because the values are going up so high, so quickly right now. So in the offer, you've already written the offer?
Yeah, we accepted it last night. But, you know, the home was a unique feature, well, a unique home, like it's not in a neighborhood. So a lot of the agents said the CMA is all over the place,
Like it's a tough one to comp. Hmm.
Yeah. So I guess,
And you're on the listing side.
yeah.
Okay. So they have a mortgage contingency in the agreement of sale, in the offer that you signed?
So there is a contingency, but it's for the list price up to what they contributed, what they're paying. But now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I did the CMA last night and I'm like, I'm wondering if it is too high, what I priced it at.
So is what you're saying, they wrote into the agreement that they would be willing to cover any difference from the list price,
Correct.
like starting at the list price or?
Yep.
Okay, so between the list price and where they are, they're willing to make up that difference. So.
Right, which is great. But then I thought about it. I'm like, well, what if the list price is too high?
Mhm. So in that situation, essentially what happens is if it appraises less than the list price,
Then we renegotiate, right?
then you have the opportunity to renegotiate, but that doesn't mean that your seller has to accept that. It doesn't mean that your seller has to say, okay, I'm just going to use round numbers because obviously you don't want to disclose what you're under contract for, but let's just pretend it's 500,000. The list price was 5, you're under contract, let's just say for 525, just to kind of keep the numbers simple. And it appraises, let's say at 490.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that your sellers have to take 490. They can say, okay, well, we'll go get the next deal then. And then the buyers might say, oh, well, wait, we still want the house. So it's a total negotiation. I think it's just all on how you handle it and how far away it could be. But I will say that you will not know until that appraisal comes back. So, don't stay up at night thinking about it because you can't do anything about it other than has the appraisal already occurred?
We just went under contract last night.
Okay. So what I would suggest is that you gather the comps that you feel are the most effective. And then I usually meet the appraiser or I'll email it to them. And then
How do you find out who the appraiser is?
when they make the appointment to do the appraisal, typically they're either calling you or putting it through showing time. So you'll have their information.
Okay, because I'm very, very cautious because I know this is being recorded, but the comps that I ran last night are below what it was listed at.
So when you listed it originally, did you use different comps?
I did.
And are they too old now or why can you not use those?
They were just all over the place.
I mean, I would just go with the high ones. You want to make sure the square footage is in line. That's a big one for appraisers. So I would go, obviously they need to be in the same school district. They need to be a similar style home if you can get it. Square footage is a big one. So if you can find similar homes with similar square footage that can justify your price, I would pull those specifically because the appraisers really whack you for square footage. Like if if it's 1,000 square foot more than yours, they're going to pull it down with that. So I'd probably do that. And then I would make a list of all the upgrades that the homeowner has done within the past 5 years and the cost of those upgrades and give that to the appraiser, whether it's physically giving it to him if you're meeting him there or emailing it to him and just confirm that he or she did receive it.
Okay, great, thanks.
They can use that for leverage to get the price up. Has anyone else been in situations like that or have questions around appraisals? Okay. Any other questions? Anything that you're curious about when you're writing an offer, when you're receiving an offer, and you're sort of wondering how to handle it? What should we do? What's best practice?
I have one other question. So I've heard different theories on this. I know in my case, the other agent already posted under contract, but some people say don't do that because anything could happen. What is the best practice on that?
You have the listing, right?
Mhm.
So when you say you've posted it as under contract, you've changed your MLS listing to under contract?
I did, but the other agent already posted on social media, and some people say don't post on social media until, I mean, obviously, I think it's great to post because then you create more awareness about it and all that. But I haven't posted anything because people say don't do it until it settles.
Well, I mean, posting it as under contract is different obviously than posting it as sold. So, I mean, I would personally say for the purposes of marketing, yeah, I'd probably post it as under contract unless you really feel like this is not a solid deal at all and you're very, very concerned about it. It's like an unusual situation, but normally I would always post it as under contract.
Okay, thanks.
You know, you can
I'm
use
like, he did, I might as well, right?
yeah, you absolutely can. I mean, if
Yeah.
it's under contract, show it off. I would definitely do that. Good for you. Is it Chantal? Am I saying that correctly? So you said you have a couple deals going on right now. Do you have any questions about anything that came up with that? Or any comments or feedback for us?
Well, that's what we were just on the phone with our client about. We were going over an appraisal, and this person had said that they wanted to switch from an FHA to a conventional. And is that allowed? I have no idea. What does that look like? So, honey.
Sorry, I was multitasking. Yeah, we've wrapped up an inspection, but I think what they're hoping is some of the things that came out of the inspection that we potentially ask for a seller's assist or a reduction in cost, which then would put them or have them be able to qualify for a conventional instead of an FHA loan, which gave them some benefits as a first-time buyer and waived some concerns about an FHA appraisal that would generate some additional repairs. So like, how are you kind of handling people that want to change their financing throughout the course of the deal? Or does that come up and how is that handled?
Yeah, that's a really good question because that does come up. So you, just to set the stage, you have the buyer or the seller?
We have the buyer.
You have the buyer.
And the buyer qualified for one thing up to a certain amount for conventional, and then of course higher for FHA. And so we ended up having to go FHA because of what we had to offer. But ideally, I think they prefer conventional, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So your buyer wants to go from FHA to conventional. Okay. Ooh, sorry. Sorry, guys. All my things are connected, so I must have to turn that off. So going from FHA to conventional in the eyes of as a seller's agent, to me, that's a benefit. That means that you don't have to deal, like you said, with the FHA potential repairs and things like that. So as long as your buyer has a pre-approval for a conventional mortgage, I would just submit the conventional mortgage pre-approval with the change in terms and just, say, hey, they were able to get a better deal this way. They'd like to go ahead and switch, but you just have to make sure too that that you have enough time to get it to closing. So as long as you're still in the pretty early stages of the deal, I would think that would be fine. And then obviously just make sure they understand the difference in their closing costs, like on the buyer end. But I wouldn't imagine from the seller side that would really be an issue.
And it doesn't make a seller or listing agent nervous when the financing switched after being in the deal a week or two under contract that the buyer wants to switch financing, like that doesn't make them nervous at all?
I in that situation, I mean, I think it depends on a number of factors. Like they've obviously reviewed probably like the BFI and all of that kind of stuff. So if it were me as a listing agent, I think as long as I was able to talk to the lender and just, you know, get kind of the warm and fuzzies from it, I would feel totally good about it. And switching
Okay.
from FHA to conventional is again is more attractive to a seller anyway. So, you know, I would look at it more as a benefit than anything. So yeah, I would just move forward with it and just be like confidently deliver it like it's like good news for everybody.
Okay.
I feel better about that now. Thanks.
Absolutely. What do you think, Scott? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I mean, FHA appraisals, I know they stick with the property too. If you do an FHA appraisal, it sticks, I think, with the property for like 6 months. So like you can't get another FHA loan. If that deal fell apart, like they're using that same appraisal. So definitely conventional is the way to go. But Allison, I got on here a little late, but I did want to bring up something that I just went through on an appraisal. So I was actually the listing agent, and the buyer said that we'll cover any appraisal gap. And we were on a contract at 345, and the highest it ever sold in the neighborhood was 315, but I was confident in the gap and everything. Anyways, it appraised the first time for 315, and I didn't go to the appraiser because I knew the guy was going to cover the difference anyway. And I talked to the appraiser, he seemed really cool, and I was like, can I send you some comps? I'm kind of tied up right now. And I said, I'll let you go, but I usually meet the appraiser there. And I sent him the comps, and I thought everything was going to be great. It came back at 315, 30 grand less. And the buyer was upset. He's like, what the heck? I can't believe I didn't want to pay the extra money, but I guess I have to. I was like, well, listen, man, here's your options. And I was talking, their agent was kind of like newer. So I was trying to help him out. I'm like, you can get another mortgage. You still have time, man, a different appraisal, but you got to go with a different mortgage company. And I talked to my clients and I said, listen, they're just going to give it a shot. They're still going to cover the difference. I understand where they're coming from. We did it. And of course, I met the appraiser that time. Turns out he knows someone on the Allison McGuire team. He's like, oh yeah, I went to college with them. And I'm like, yeah, it's great. So like you build that rapport. The guy was really cool. He's like, I went to Westchester University. I went there too. Next thing I know, I came back at 345 full price. And the buyer was so happy. The agent was happy. And that's what it's all about, you know. And it's just crazy to me how different appraisals can come back at one point, at one number, and then the next day can come back at another number. That's what's not fair about this business. And they control a lot of things. But if you don't show your face there and build that relationship, it's a good chance that it might not come up there. I always explain the story of the seller too. That really helps out too, because they're going to feel for them. And, you know, if you can show them the comps, I mean, a house sold in the next door neighborhood that's not as nice as a neighborhood for like 335, but they were taking everything from the one neighborhood. But why not look at everything else that's selling and the type of market? And that's what he told me. He's like, Scott, everything's selling for so much more right now. Just put that in the report and we're good. And it's like, perfect. And I felt a lot better going to sleep at night. And I should have showed up to the first appraisal, but it's not my job I don't have to do that. I knew I was protecting my clients either way, but I felt bad that it happened that way. And I was like, you know, I'm going to do it this time again, and I bet you it'll turn out. And sure enough, it did. So, and then now that guy's scheduling, the same agent scheduling a showing on one of my new listings, and I'm like, that's great. I'm like, hopefully you can sell another one, man. Like, this is great. I like to work with you, and you know, it just helps out, man. And you always have to build relationships with these agents in this marketplace. You can't burn bridges. You really can't. You know, I get carried away sometimes. I have, but I've been learning. Like, listen, you have to build relationships with other agents in this business, and just keep the peace, and you know, help each other out. You know, we're all in this together. So.
I love that. That's such a great story. And you know what? I think that's so true. There's so much to be said for the relationships, both like, you know, and thinking outside the box, like you created a win-win-win for everybody. Whereas like you could have just let it go because your client would have been fine. There was an appraisal gap, it would have been fine, but it, you know, it made everything cleaner, smoother. And you're right, like these appraisals, you know, they can come in so differently.
Yeah.
Just like there's a lot of finesse that goes into it. So I love that story. I think that's
And not having the background of the appraisals, you said there were 2 appraisals. I thought there would just be 1.
So there's only one with the certain mortgage company. And then in order to get a second appraisal done, I mean, the seller has to agree to it if you're switching mortgage companies, but you would have to switch to a different mortgage company to get a second appraisal done. You can't stick with the same company and get a second appraisal done. It's got to be switched to a completely different mortgage company. They're going to want to do their own appraisal. And you just kind of got to get lucky sometimes. But, you know, there's ways to be creative and think of outside the box. I mean, I'm not going to let an appraiser say this is what it's worth, and I'm only going to listen to this guy. I mean, who the heck is he? You know, it's someone's opinion of value. So why not try somebody else out if you need to, you know? But if there was only 2 weeks left to closing, we wouldn't have been able to do that. You know, we still had a little bit over a month. So I'm like, all right, this will work, you know? And I talked to that lender and I'm like, listen, will you make sure we're closed on time? He's like, yes, we'll be fine. They worded it as a rush appraisal. Now they're paying for the second appraisal, the buyer is, but hey, they spent another $475, but it helped them out in the long run. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think the name of the game in this business, and, you know, when you're looking at writing offers and looking at negotiating, is just like getting creative. Sometimes you just got to get really creative to figure out how to get the deal done. And I think that's what I love about Keller Williams too, like being able to have these conversations, you pick up on these little things that are like lifesavers for the deal. So I think that's a great story.
Yeah.
Do we have any other specific questions? I'm gonna see if they're gonna let me share my screen here with you guys, and I have like a little, our team has like a little a sheet on basically like how to win the deal. And we often share this with our clients because you know, this market is so competitive on the buying side that you know, in certain situations, depending on what's going on, you know, you're pretty much saying like, hey, I will put your kids in college if we can win the deal here. Like, what can I do to win the deal? So we find that it's really helpful for our clients to be able to sort of like look at this and digest it, and we can come up with ideas together on how we're going to help them win the deal. So let me see if I can screen share with you. Please don't judge me for whatever else is on my screen because I don't know. I think this will work. Just hang with me. Here we go. Can you guys see my screen? You can? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So options to win the deal. So I think something that's kind of neat about this is, you know, if you're writing an offer, yeah, money is, you know, like the amount of money that you're offering is obviously huge, but there's a lot of things that help win deals that don't have anything to do with directly increasing your sale price. So, you know, we have them all listed here. We have options that involve money, options that involve inspections, appraisal, deposit, writing a letter to the seller, different settlement dates, and then just sort of some finessing that you can do a little bit like Scott was talking about as far as relationships. So the first one we have here is options that involve money. Obviously, you can increase your offer price. You can go in directly like at a really high number. You can use an escalation clause. Are you guys familiar with what an escalation clause is?
You could explain it a little bit. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. So I usually describe it like an automatic bid form. So essentially what you'd say, and I'll just give you an example because I think it's easier to understand. Let's pretend that you're bidding on a house that's $300,000 and you want to go above asking. Your maximum bid that your client's going to make is $325, let's say. So the form automatically will bid up to over the next highest offer by a certain amount. So let's say you put 1,000. So if the highest bidder, if their bid was 320, then your bid clause would take you up to 321. Now, if somebody bid over 325, it's only going to take you to 325. It's not going to take them any higher than that. And in order for your client to, you know, for your client's offer to be escalated, the seller has to give you show you a copy of the other offer that escalated your buyer's offer. So they can't just say, oh yeah, it escalated to 325, we'll take that deal. They actually have to show you the competing offer. So that's a great one when you know, your client knows how high they want to go and they, you know, they want to automatically bid, but they don't want to just blindly, let's say, overpay so far ahead of somebody else, because obviously sometimes you just don't know what other people are bidding. Another thing you can do besides, you know, just increasing the offer is you can offer to pay both sides of the transfer tax. So in most cases, it's 1% of the sale price on either side. So something you can do is, you know, write in there that the buyer will pay the seller's side as well. So that would be an additional 1% of whatever the sale price is on the property. So that there's some other options that involve money, but I would say those are the biggest ones. Scott, do you have anything else sort of special that you would add to that as far as options that involve the sale price besides offer price, escalation, or transfer tax paying?
Good question. I'll have to think about it in a couple minutes. Sorry, I was looking at something. Yeah, I'll see if I can chime in with something.
Yeah, just chime in if you have any other anything else creative that I'm not talking about here. So we can, and everybody please feel free to ask questions, chime in. I feel like the more interactive this is, the more helpful it is for everybody.
I will say one thing. I have really good relationships with my home inspectors, and yeah, they do get busy, but like I'll literally call them up before an inspection, and sometimes I'll tell them like, how quickly can we get an inspection? And like literally it could be like, okay, I can come out tomorrow, the next day. And sometimes I'll put in like a 3-day period, and that helps. Or I'll bring them through on a showing, you know, like if someone really wants to get an inspection, we'll come in for like 45 minutes, an hour. This might even be on here. I didn't read the whole thing, but bring them through on a showing. And then I'm waiving inspections because they went through the property and they told them like verbally what's up with the property. And if there's something major, then we don't even bid on it. But if it's something, if they felt good about it, then we could just waive inspections and now it's done. So that helps out. And they charge usually for that, like a walkthrough for like an hour. For me, it's been like $150, $150, $200. So it's cheaper than a normal home inspection. But at least you feel more comfortable with it. Because some clients just don't want to do it. You know, it's the only way around it for me is to get the inspection.
Do you pay for that, or do you have the buyer pay for that?
So I have the buyers pay for it. But the thing is one time I was like real confident that this would work. And we didn't get the deal after we waived inspections. And I felt so bad. And I could tell like they didn't have much money. I was like, listen, I feel bad for you guys. Like, let me pay for that. You know, we'll get we'll get a property. I'm like, let me just pay for that. You know, I'll reimburse you guys for that. I really thought we were going to get that property and we didn't get it. So I was like, you know what, it'll come back to me, you know, so.
Do you guys ever proactively do that on the west side to get it inspected on the west side and then provide that to the buyers to avoid inspection?
Yeah, if it's a nice property, I think it makes sense. But sometimes these properties have a lot of things that come up, and I think that would scare a lot of people away. But yeah, if it's a decent property and it's well maintained, I think it really helps out. And then yeah, a lot of people will waive inspections. But I get a little nervous if the property has a lot of issues that are going to come up. I think I'll probably get a lot of offers not coming in through the door. So it depends on the property, I would say. Personally.
Yeah. I also think it depends on the market, right? Like this market is such a hot seller's market that I think you can, you know, there's a lot of situations where people are just waiving inspections anyway. So it's like somebody might not have even done inspections at all. Whereas like in another market, it might be, it might be even more beneficial. So I think that one's like, I feel like you ask, you know, 25 people that question, you're going to get 25 different answers because I think it's so property specific. And I think it's also market specific. So
and even
it depends on your strategy.
Yeah, and Allison, even with stucco houses nowadays, I mean, this market's completely different. Before, everybody's getting stucco inspections. I just had that one deal. We had 13 offers, and I think 5 people out of 13 waived inspections completely. No stucco. It was all completely stucco. Waived all stucco inspections. And hey, if we would have got the stucco ahead of time test done, and there was some repairs and stuff, then they would have had to do stuff and disclose the stuff. Where in this market, you know, people are even waiving that. So
yeah,
it really depends.
It's unbelievable some of the stuff we're seeing.
Oh yeah.
That's a good question though. That I feel like that comes up a lot with regards to when to do a pre-inspection or not.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing we have on here is appraisal contingency. We're seeing a lot with this. We're talking a lot about appraisals right now because there's, you know, the comps are taking some time to catch up to where the values are going. So something that we were using for a little while there, we haven't been using it as much anymore, but just to see if your lender can do what's called a desktop underwriting review, which could allow you to waive the appraisal completely. And basically what they do is they look, you know, your lender goes and they have their backend system, just like we have our MLS, and they can say, okay, like this one, it has an appraisal waiver at that price that you're at. So like, you don't, you know, we're not going to have to even do a formal appraisal. Now, this is only for certain lenders that can do this. It depends on the situation, but if you can do this, it's great because your buyer's already protected because the value, you know, on their end's already been, basically they're saying it suffices. And then on, as far as being aggressive on the buying end, you can look like you're just fully waiving that. So that's I think that's a really good tool in the tool belt to use if you can. Does anyone have questions on that one? Might be a little confusing. Okay. Obviously you can add a clause there where you can have an appraisal gap, like we were just talking about before with the question, how there was an appraisal gap there. So basically saying the buyer will make up the difference up to a maximum of a certain amount of money. That's a pretty popular one. And then you have sometimes people just waive it all together. And they'll say, we feel so confident in it, or we have that much cash in order to make up the difference. Now, there's a caveat with that. If you are going to waive the appraisal, obviously you need to make sure that financially your buyers can do it, that they have the money to make up the gap. Because if they don't have the money to make up the gap, then you are not, they're not going to be able to move forward, and then your mortgage contingency is going to kick in. Have you ever had that happen, Scott? Where someone said they would make up the difference and then couldn't? I haven't, but I'm curious.
I feel like it has happened to me, man. People do crazy stuff. I mean, that was kind of getting close where the one person was like, oh, I don't know if I'm in, but then they would lose the deposit, and we had a non-refundable deposit on there. So I was pretty excited about that. But yeah, I get nervous. I mean, people say they'll do a lot of crazy things and they're just banking on that. Oh, I had it one time where this agent's like, she left the appraisal contingency out there, and I'm like, okay, so what happens? She's like, well, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And I'm like, yeah, but are you going to cover the gap? And she just tried to get like real smart with me. And I'm just like, okay, well, we're not going to take your offer because like you have no game plan to get there.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just people try a lot of sneaky ways, and you just want to verify that BFI, the buyer's financial information sheet. That's so important to like really go through that well and make sure that you're protected and they have the money to come up with the difference if need be.
Yeah, both on the buying and the selling end. Because as the buyer's agent, you need to make sure you're setting them up for success. And then on the selling side, you want to make sure that that thing is tight so that if something comes up, that they have what they need to reasonably make up the difference. All right, so that takes us through appraisals. So deposit money, obviously a high deposit is always attractive. When you are on the list side, it just shows more, I always call it like skin in the game. You're showing skin in the game. You're showing you're serious, and you're willing to put money on the line that can potentially be held up if something happens with the deal. So on the buying side, obviously you need to make sure that this is, that you feel really good about it, that you feel like it's clean, and that they can put a nice chunk of money up there. I would say from my personal, I guess, opinion on the listing side of things, I would say a decent sized deposit money. I usually look for like 3 to 5% of deposit money. People that put like giant deposit money down, it's nice, but all the other things need to, it's not going to trump a lot of these other things to just have a giant deposit. So I think you just need to have like a reasonable, nice size deposit. I will say, like, when you have these low ones, like people aren't doing it as much anymore, but sometimes you'd see like $1,000 first deposit or something like that. I think that game needs to be taken up a little bit right now in this market.
Does 2 deposits make a difference too as a listing agent, or would you rather just see the one up front?
I don't have a strong preference on that. Frankly, I think for just like logistics, sometimes I feel like it's easier just to have one deposit. Also, when somebody on the buying end has a bigger deposit up front, it just, I think, smooth things out a little bit as far as the inspections go, because at the end of the day, even if they terminate, like the seller still has to sign off on that doc. Like, it's not like a literal automatic money goes back. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to skip over the letter part real quick, but just the settlement and possession options. I think this is a big one for a lot of sellers. Like, you have some sellers that, they need to sell them in order to buy. So they want that really long period for, to be able to find themselves a new house. So in some cases, shorter is not always better. Sometimes people want to, a short contingency date. I think this is where the communication really comes in key, because you have to know what the sellers are looking for. In some cases they might say, hey, like, we want to close as soon as possible because we have X, Y, and Z, or, we want 90 days because we need time to look for our family for our new home. Whatever it is, I think communication, again, is just key here. Something we do too, in a lot of cases, we haven't been doing it as much anymore, but offering like a post-settlement possession or a lease back if that's attractive to the seller. And that's another way to potentially shorten up the time period for the settlement date, but then let the seller stay in the house so that they can use their funds to buy their new house and be non-contingent. I think that can be extremely attractive to a seller who needs that money to move to their next home. And I can talk a little bit more about that if anyone's not clear about what that is, because that's sort of a specific strategy. Does anyone have questions on that?
Yeah, how loose do you get outside of like calculating a daily rent back amount? Like, do you do any deposit, or like, my assumption is you're already in the home, you're already taking care of the home. The home is probably going to be in the same condition whether I get it at the closing date or I get it a week or two after. So, there's a bunch of options within there, right? To like request additional deposits and stuff. Do you just go strictly by what the daily rate is, or do you add anything else within that post settlement from a buyer's perspective?
So I think that it just depends on the situation. If you're trying to win the deal with it, obviously, if you're not charging back, that's more attractive to the seller. So I think it just depends on the situation. If it's a really competitive situation, either a really low amount or not charging them at all, depends how long it is. If it's a couple months versus a couple weeks, that's different too, because keep in mind, your buyers are going to have to start paying on the house. So it may just be something where they're just like, hey, we just want you to cover the mortgage for the time that you're in there or whatever. But I think it's just really important in general to fill that form out completely and correctly. I think it's important to make sure that the insurance part of that form is filled out correctly, just in case something happens. And I always, on the buying side, would want a deposit, just because money's already been moved. You don't have that same leverage to be like, oh, I'm not going to settle because something was screwed up, because you've already settled. So I think you do want to have a deposit on there that's appropriate to, the size of the house or condition.
How does that money move back at the end of the post settlement agreement?
It's just sent in a check. Like, usually that's what we do. Just have the client send a check.
Okay. And do we facilitate the handing off of the keys at the expiration of the post settlement agreement?
I always do. I always kind of just, do like a final walkthrough with them. I also, in this situation, have the buyers sign, when you're going to settlement, have them sign the post-settlement possession form, or I'm sorry, the, what's the form I'm talking about? The form that basically says the house is in suitable condition. And then I perform the walkthrough. I guess, what's it called? The buyer's walkthrough form. Scott, do you know what I'm talking about? The form that you have your buyers sign off on. I just can't think of the name of it when you do your final walkthrough.
Yeah, that's a good form. I always forget to use it. I don't use that, but I do really like it. I've seen it used before. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. In any case, it's in par forms, if it pops into my head, I'll let you know. But it's essentially, it's a really good one to use, because like if something comes up after the fact, you have it documented that the buyer accepted the home and did their walkthrough. So is definitely a lot more logistics, but it can be a really great tool to win an offer if that's attractive to the seller. And a lot of times today too, just having the conversation with the listing agent of like, hey, what's important to your client? Like, I can't tell you, like, as a listing agent, sometimes you don't even get a call from the buyer's agent to say like, what do they need? What's the situation? Like, to assess the whole situation. And the agents that end up winning the offers are the agents that are making those calls, because they're able to, create this offer that's more attractive to the seller with all of these terms, which can be, very important to a seller.
So not to spend too much time on this topic, and if you want to take it offline, I could shut my mouth and let you finish. what's more attractive to you, like closing the deal and then going to the post settlement so the deal's closed, or like if the listing agent and the seller don't have a preference but they would like a later change of possession date, from your guys' perspective and doing this many times, like is it better to have a later close date, or is it better to get closed, have the deal done, and then post settlement?
I think that question really just depends on whether or not the seller needs the funds to buy their new house.
Okay.
So if the seller needs the funds to buy their new house, they're going to want to do the post settlement possession. If not, it's just cleaner and easier just to, have a longer settlement date.
Got it. That
You
makes
don't want to
sense.
have it too long though, because then there's like things that expire and things that can
Mhm.
happen, and just like more time in between can cause issues. But I would say for the most part, that's that's my personal opinion on that. Scott,
That
I don't
makes
know.
a lot of sense.
All right. So what else? We skipped over write a letter to the sellers. So, the write a letter to the sellers, the, lender to call the seller's agent, you as the buyer agent to call the selling side. All of like those things are like the warm and fuzzies. They're not as much of the, things that you're putting on paper per se, but those are the things that I think give a little bit of warmth to the offer, a little bit of feel good. And I will say, just like Scott said about the relationships, I feel like that goes a long way when it comes to the seller's agent feeling really good and comfortable about your offer. And then obviously if you're writing, I always call them love letters. If you're having your buyer write a love letter to the seller, just saying like why they love the house and a little bit about themselves and things like that, that can be really, really helpful, because sometimes, it's the house that, Mr. and Mrs. Seller raised their kids in, and they're very emotionally attached to it, and they would love to see it go to, someone who's really going to love it just like they did. And I've seen on multiple occasions these letters change, the outcome of a situation where the sellers will pick because of some of these letters sometimes and how they touch them. So I think that that's something that's, if your buyer's willing to do and you feel like they can convey it well, like we've had people too, where like a buyer writes a letter and you're like, I don't know if this is like really like what's going to help win the deal. But if you feel like your buyer can convey it in a way that will be, kind of tug at the heartstrings a little bit, then I think it's a great opportunity to let them do that. So I think that can be a really powerful one.
I just had one where I recommend doing it too, because if they really love the property, I mean, you really got to put everything forward, your best foot forward. But I had one that was crazy. Like, we didn't get the offer. We were second place and they felt so bad, but they had a friend on the same street that was looking to sell. And they said they would let us see the property first before we even hit the market, and they'd be okay with not hitting the market for whatever reason. And, we're supposed to see that house actually this week. It's in Philadelphia, but like, just because of that letter, they felt so bad and they had a friend. Like, it's just like little things like that. Like, we're just so happy, because if it doesn't, like, everything is flying off the market, even down there, and just to be able to go see it and put a strong offer in, we might get it. And that's just like, that's so great. And if we didn't write that letter, I don't think it would ever happen. So.
I love that. That's like such a good success story.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we have here? Settlement possessions, lender to call the seller's agent. I really like this one. We have our lender do this a lot. And it's just a quick call, not to bother them because they're getting a million calls, even if it's just like a voicemail to say, hey, this is, so-and-so from this mortgage company. I just wanted to let you know, I know, Allison from Moore McGuire team sent an offer in. I just want you to know these buyers are solid, qualified. I've run this, I've run that, just kind of like giving them an extra layer of confidence that this is like a really strong buyer if they are, mortgage contingent. I feel like that's another one of those things that just all about the relationship, all about that sort of touch that you put on your offer. So that's a really good one too. And then, something we're seeing more and more and more now is people not only just providing a pre-approval letter, but being already having their mortgage commitment with their offer. So they've already fully underwritten that buyer. All they had to do, really is just contingent upon like an appraisal to be have a full mortgage commitment. And that's something that will give a lot of confidence to the listing side if you have that, because you know, it's definitely a step up from the pre-approval. And that's something you want to kind of consult with your mortgage lender on, like some of this stuff too. That's all. I think that's also why it's important to have a good relationship with the lender that you're using, and, you know, really have it be reciprocal, because you want to talk through these strategies with them so that they can help you win the deal. Not only are, you know, you're their client, your clients are their client, you're kind of all, you know, working together. If they can help you by doing some of these things, sometimes you just have to ask the question, because, you know, you have to say, hey, you know, can we get an appraisal, like is there a desktop appraisal on this, and can we get it waived? Can you call the seller's agent and let them know Mr. and Mrs. Smith are like knock it out of the park qualified? Can you, you know, give me a commitment letter with them before we actually, you know, go further down the road, so I can accompany the offer with it? Like you need to ask the questions so that you can get the results that you're looking for. Have you guys developed relationships yet with lenders? Are you still kind of working on that?
I
Graham and I
have,
have. Yeah.
yeah. Just, that's the world I came from. Before I did this, I had 36 years of banking, so I have a boatload of lender buddies. So more so just to get them to be good referral sources for me as well. So, but yeah, got a couple of them.
Perfect. It's great to have different lenders to go to too for different situations, you know, like you know, sometimes you need that lender who just be creative and get it done. It's sometimes you need a different lender who, you know, maybe has a little bit of a different personality, can work really well with certain types of people. So I think it's always nice to have multiple relationships, but have them be, you know, where you really know how that person works and they know how you like to work. All right, 3:17. What else do you guys want to talk about? I don't know how long this was supposed to be. It was supposed to be an hour. Do we know? We're going to call it an hour, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I won't take up the whole hour if we don't have other things we want to talk about though. So you guys let me know. Melissa, do you have anything? She's still here. Oh yeah.
I don't. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I wish you good luck with that deal. Hopefully everything goes nice and smooth for you.
Yeah, he did some, I'm gonna get a list of all the stuff that he did since it sold recently. So I
Perfect.
think I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, if nobody else has anything, we'll wrap up. And if anybody needs to reach me or has further questions or wants to connect, you know, off of this, I'm happy to chat at any time. Just let me know. I'm in the Westchester office, like I said, and you can find me in the directory.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.